I'm going to call to order the January 22nd, 2024 work session of the Shenandoah County School Board, pre-budget work session and meeting at 6:32. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Before we get into the business of this evening's work session and the information we're going to receive, I wanted to kind of lay out the schedule for this evening, because it's a little bit different than we've done before. So you're probably aware we're going to have a work session dealing with the items that are here. Mostly it's going to be on the model policies. And that meeting will likely carry us past or up to 7:30. And at 7:30, we have the scheduled meeting, not a work session, but a pre-budget public hearing. And those citizens who have come and want to speak on the budget and their feelings on it will be given an opportunity from 7:30 on to do that. So while we are in recess from our work session, we will conduct that meeting. That meeting will only consist of public comments from those people here. And I want to make this clear to you as well as anybody who comes here that the only comments and the only subject we want to hear have to deal with the budget because it's going to be a long night. It's dedicated for that. There will be times for us to discuss the transgender policies and other things as well later, but we want to get the pre-budget public hearings kind of under control and started this evening. And ladies, I'm going to ask you, Krista and Cheryl, if people come in while we're engaging in business and you just want to alert them that I don't want somebody to come in at 6:40 and sit there for an hour, and then when they get up and they want to talk about a different issue, and we say, sorry, you can't do that. If I were them, I wouldn't be happy. But if they're cautioned that that's what we're going to do, they'll be able to just depart and come back at another time. Then after the last of the public speakers, we will close that meeting, and then we will reconvene, or reconvene from our earlier recess, and we will conclude the business of the work session. And I also, at that point, I would like to conclude with, we'll see if it's short, but a session where there are school board member comments to close out the evening. And the reason I'm doing that is it does give the school board members kind of an official time to put something on the board that we don't necessarily need to discuss tonight, but we want to make sure it's on the docket or in the do loop, if you will, for the school board and for the superintendent for future action. So that's the way I think we'll proceed. So we're here for to hear the presentation of information about the budget development process. Dr. Shepard,
Thank you.
it's all yours.
So I am handing around the presentation. You can look at it on this screen, or it's right in front of you in case you want to take notes. Just hand it back that way. There's a few extra copies. So this evening, we're going to talk about our fiscal year 25 budget. We're continuing our journey to success, which is there on the first page. And if you move to the second page, you'll see an overview of what we're going to discuss this evening. So we'll be talking about our division goals, mission, vision, beliefs, talking about student information, personnel, capital improvement, budget process and information. We'll talk about the fiscal year 2025 budget focus, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions. So we like to start our meetings with the division goals, vision, mission, and beliefs. And our goal is really for all students to be ready for what comes next. So whether it's a 12th grader who's graduating high school, or whether it's and heading off to college or into the workforce, we want them to be prepared for whatever it is they want to do after they graduate high school. Or maybe it's our 5th graders moving to 6th grade. We want to make sure that they have the skills that they need in order to be prepared for the independence that they're going to get as they move on to 6th grade. Or our 2nd graders who are transitioning from learning to read to reading to learn. We want to make sure that all of our students have what they need in order to be successful. So right after school ended last year, we facilitated some meetings with our schools and their leadership teams at each of the schools. And each of those schools were comprised of principals, teachers, school leaders, and we talked about what we need to do for continuous improvement. So we dissected data, we planned for our 23-24 school year, and then these plans became our North Star. Throughout the summer, we met with school leaders to set the stage for this school year. We started the school year with 14 new administrators, which were new to the county or new to their position. We had an incredible opportunity to set expectations for this school year and establish strong, knowledgeable leadership. We used the information we learned from parents, community, and staff to establish common expectations and improve our school culture. Next, you'll see our division mission. And our mission is to prepare students for lifelong learning, emphasizing the importance of student preparation, valuing and respecting all members of the learning community, fostering a work environment built on trust and open communication, and prioritizing continuous improvement. Next is our division vision. We want to be the top division in the state. We want to foster success in all of our students, maintain high standards for our personnel, promote goals and values, and recognize superior performance. And we also want to align with our Virginia Department of Education standards of learning. And then our beliefs. At our core is a commitment to what is best in the best interest of our students. We recognize that meaningful relationships are paramount to student learning and growth. As the elementary students said in their attendance videos over the last several weeks, that our students are worth it. So that was our division, mission, vision, goals, and beliefs. Now we're going to talk about student enrollment and student information. So I think I'm on slide number 8. You will notice over the last 12 years that there has been a steady decline of students here in Shenandoah County. Since 2012, we have 581 students less. However, our fall student records collection indicates that we have 73 more students in K-12 this year than we did last year. But we have 15 less pre-K students than last year. We went from 199 pre-K students to 184 pre-K students. So you'll see a slight uptick this year in student enrollment. Here's a different way of looking at our student enrollment data. You will notice again the dark blue column is our fall enrollment, and then the lighter blue is our March membership. So it declines from September through March each year. We started the year with 5,507 K-12 students, and we anticipate we'll end with 5,400 and some, but more than we had last year. So looking at our enrollment trends, here are elementary schools, and you will notice a couple of things here. At Honey Run Elementary School, we have 114 additional students in that building, more this year than last year. And if you will recall, we moved the 5th grade students from North Fork Middle School to Honey Run Elementary School, and the 8th graders from Mountain View High School to North Fork Middle School to make room for Massanutten Regional Governor School, so that we can add a couple of programs at Triplet Tech, which was HVAC and occupational physical therapy assistant. And you will notice a slight decrease at Sandy Hook Elementary School and W.W. Robinson during the year of 2020, 2021. We moved the 5th grade students to the middle schools during COVID. The next slide are our middle schools. And then the following slide are our high schools. And again, in 2020, 2021, you'll notice Central High School and Strasburg High School had a slight increase because they have 8th graders, which Mountain View High School already had. You'll notice a decrease at Mountain View High School from last year to this year, because the 8th grade moved back to North Fork Middle School. And just for your information, Massanutten Regional Governor School has about 80 students. So they lost a little over 100 students and they gained 80 students from Governor School. So one of the ways we predict our kindergarten class is by birth rate. So we're able to look at the Virginia Department of Health to give us this information. So you will notice over the last 20 couple years, the birth rate has been between 400 and a little over 500. That uptick there in 2006-07, those are our juniors and seniors this year, so they will graduate. So you'll see 537 births in 2006 and 538 in 2007. Those are probably two of our larger classes, and they'll graduate this year and next year. And if you'll notice, the next slide will show it better, but you'll notice that we had a slight decrease, a significant decrease from 2020 to 2022 in births. So the students who were born in 2018 are our kindergarten students. So the dark blue line on this slide is the birth rate, and the lighter blue line are the number of students who entered kindergarten. And you will notice that we have fewer students who attend kindergarten than were born 5 years earlier. So for 2023, about 82% of the children that were born actually made it to one of our schools as a kindergarten student. In 2022, that was 77%. So it has increased a little bit over the last year in percentage. of students born 5 years earlier versus kindergarten enrollment. So any questions right now about birth rate or enrollment at our particular schools? We're going to go into some student population information here next.
I have one question. Going back to the September enrollment versus the March average daily membership, what causes that decrease in the same school year?
So a couple of things. So one of the things that we don't necessarily encourage are students who graduate in December. So we prefer to have students all year because we have opportunities for students for the whole year, but some students, because of circumstances, will graduate in December. So that's one of the reasons. There are others as well, students moving out of the county and so on and so forth. So, yep, good question.
Thank you.
So the next slide, number 15, details our free and reduced lunch eligibility. So it's fluctuated over the last 10 years. The lowest number of students eligible for free and reduced lunch was 2,621 students in 2014-15, and the high over the last 10 years was in 2020-21 with almost 3,000 students eligible for free and reduced lunch. This slide shows the number of English learners in Shenandoah County Public Schools. You will notice an increase from 2014 to 2024, or 2021. And then over the last 3 years, the number of English learners has leveled off. And then we have on slide number 17, we have our students with 504 plans and our students with disabilities. You'll notice that this year our students with disabilities are slightly less than last year at 900 versus 908. And then our students with 504 plans from 356 to 330. So 504 is separate from the IDEA special education regulations, but provisions of 504 services are similar to the compliance needed for special education. So we have to offer specialized instruction or specialized care for students who have a 504 plan. So there's a lot of legal requirements for students with 504 plans and accommodations. So we're rounding out our student information and population. Are there any questions about any of the information presented so far? Any additional? Yes?
Do we have the student population for the special education and the 504 plan split out by school or by level, like elementary, middle, high?
Yes, yes, we do. I have it on a spreadsheet that I can send to you. I don't have it with me.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me write myself a jot a note. All right. So we're on to personnel. So some of this information may be a repeat to school board members from information that was presented in September of this year, but I thought it was worth repeating because this is one of the areas in which we will be a focus this year is teacher retention. So you'll notice that in 2022-23, the column to the left, we had a 15% teacher turnover. Staff turnover. The next slide, you will notice that 47% of the teachers who left had 11 or more years of experience. However, 66% of our staff have 7 or more years of teaching experience. So that's 24% have 0 to 3, and let me see where. Light green, 14% have 4 to 6. So 34% of our teaching staff has 0 to 6 years. So who do the 15% of the teachers who left, where did they go? They went to Frederick, Rockingham, and Warren, and some of them left the education industry altogether. So this is a fairly busy slide. It's slide number 22. We filled 107 teaching positions, 16 administrator vacancies, 19 paraprofessionals, and we still have vacancies. Actually, we just hired a speech pathologist recently, but we still have an ag teacher vacancy, middle school math teacher, middle school English teacher, special ed teachers, tech ed teacher, school counselors, math, and some elementary teachers. So one of the reasons that teachers say that they leave is because our health insurance is expensive. So here is the slide where I talk a little bit about our health insurance. So we are competitive at the employee only. So our rate is $55, which includes dental, comprehensive dental. It's the 1,000, the Aetna 1,000 plan. So it's $55 versus Frederick County's $91, and then Rockingham $71. There is a note that Rockingham has a wellness employee discount of $25 per month, so that would bring it slightly below our employee only if they do the employee wellness discount. You will notice that employee plus child were comparable to Rockingham, but well above Frederick. Employee plus children were the highest of all three. Employee plus spouse were competitive there, lower, a little lower than Frederick and Rockingham. And then employee plus family were higher. However, we did make significant progress over the last couple of years. So last year alone, we decreased our employee plus children by $336. So it was about $1,250 per month, and now it's $913. And then employee plus family also decreased by $336. Employee plus spouse decreased by $216 per month. This is a per month cost. So one of the questions you may ask is, why is our health insurance so expensive? And it's because we have a large number of large claims. So, and we don't want to discourage our employees not to use their health insurance, because that's what it's there for, but we do have a large number of employees who have large claims. We are going out for bid, and I'm looking at Linda. Ms. Hodges, do you know when we will receive the bids for our health insurance?
They're due by February 16th.
So to see if we can get a better rate. Because of our large claims, we anticipate an increase in health insurance. Mr. Rickard?
Is the number of staff between us and Frederick County or Rockingham County, does that correlate at all to the cost?
Yep.
Like us having less staff than now?
We do have less staff than both, but if their claims aren't as high as our claims, at the end of October, Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was at the end of October, Aetna was paying out $1.08 for every dollar that we gave them. So they were paying 8 more cents than what they were receiving to doctors and pharmacists than we were giving them, which is not a great business practice. But And last year it was similar, but it was a little higher than that.
Joining other school divisions to lower the cost, is there any, is that even feasible? Is it even an option?
So, and I hate to say this out loud, but I don't think that anyone will want to join with us because of our experience rate. Because it's so high, because it would increase their, so like if we went with somebody with lower experience rate, it would increase their health insurance rates.
By experience rate, you're talking about the $1.08 to the dollar?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the amount that we use our health insurance, so. Is that on target?
Don't they have a different type of insurance system? Isn't it like a self-funded, and that plays part in it as well? And maybe you can explain exactly what that is.
Yeah, so self-funded, they still have to have an administrator who pays the claims and all of that, but it's not with like an Aetna or whatever. So they still have somebody that's hired to do that work for them, because I know that I wouldn't know what to pay and what not to pay. So they have to have an expert in the field in order to be able to do that.
So does that, therefore, how does that lower their payments?
So I don't know. Do you know?
I think it has everything to do with the claims. Their claims probably aren't as high as ours.
Which is always interesting to me, how such a small division closely, I mean, teachers are the same everywhere. So what is it about Shenandoah County that we need to change or help out with to get some of those claims down? Is it, student behavior and stress? Is it offering wellness, now that we have a county wellness facility? Is it something that, how do we get those claims down comparatively to Frederick and to each end of the county?
Yep, so I put that asterisk beside Rockingham for the wellness employee discount, and I briefly looked at that. What they're doing is if an employee goes to do their wellness check every year, then they get this $25 a month discount. So, that's a thought.
Is our coverage better? Like, are we paying more? Like, let's say the claims, is our insurance paying, say, 80% and Frederick County's is only paying 70%?
Right, so if you look at ours in Rockingham, they're both $1,000 deductible program. And Frederick's, I believe, was a $500. I didn't look this year. So their deductible was a little less than our deductible being $1,000. So, but the plans are all typically the same. I know when we were trying to reduce the cost, we looked at some of the things and increased some payouts, some deductibles on our payouts.
So we just have a unhealthier staff, unfortunately, is what it comes down to.
Some, and some are, those large claims are, 10 individuals or 20 individuals, but it happens.
How long have we had Aetna?
3 years, 2 years.
What did we have before?
Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we'll get the results back in mid-February, and we'll see what our rates are.
Yeah, so last year, there were more claims paid than the company received premiums, which is not a great business model. So we knew they were going to have to do something to recoup their loss. Do we think that the same trend is continuing this year?
Yes.
So we do, wow. Okay,
It's down from last year, but it's still continuing.
yeah,
And we dumped a bunch of money into that to get those premiums down.
yeah, we
Yes, we
did.
did. Any other questions before I move on? Health insurance is a big deal. Capital improvement. So this is what you are going to see in the next few slides is a draft. I want to give you a little bit of background on our capital improvement plan. A team from the division from here visits each of the schools to determine their CIP needs, their capital improvement project needs, along with principals' input. So each of the projects recommended for the CIP list are evaluated to determine if the project is ranked desirable, necessary, or urgent. The ranking is based on 6 criteria: impact on student learning, impact on health and safety, vehicle, equipment, facility condition, the planning time needed, level of service provided, and energy efficiency and sustainability. So the School Board Finance and Budget Committee will meet on February 2nd at 2 p.m. to discuss this draft capital improvement plan, but I put it in here just for your information on the things that were on the plan. The very next slide just shows you the our facilities, the amount of square footage that we have, when the building was built, and the renovations and additions that we have had. So if you'll notice, we have just a little over a million square feet. And you will also notice that the last major renovation was in 2003-04, and they were at our high schools. It's kind of funny to note, so those renovations were 20 years ago. We're still calling the gyms new gyms and old gyms. So on the next few slides, you'll see the draft capital projects that were identified, and we have them lumped in safety and security, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And you'll notice that second column is the priority, whether it's necessary, urgent, based on those criteria I mentioned a few minutes ago. And I'm not going to highlight any of these. You can look at them at your leisure. Roofing, doors and locks, and then other projects. So at the top of the other projects is to repair the foundation at Peter Muhlenberg Middle School, and this is one of the items we found last year when we discovered an underground void, and then we need to finish the repairs there this year. So you'll notice there are 2 on this particular page. I think it's slide 28. You will notice that there are 2 on there that are desirable, which may change based on information or be taken off altogether. And so the total for the maintenance CIP is estimated at 2.1 million, and the urgent and necessary are almost 1.7 million, which is off to the side.
But these are the building and fixtures, so it doesn't include like desks or anything like that, right? It's just walls and then fixtures like the HVAC and all that?
Yes, yes. It's the big, Ms. Stein, what is included in CIP?
So anything over $5,000 is considered CIP. So projects that are going to cost us more than that. If we go and buy a desk or a chair, they're maybe $200 a piece or something like that. So that actually goes under materials and supplies.
Okay, so it's by price, not necessarily by what it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
These are going to be your major projects.
Okay.
Yep, and you'll see the next slide, slide 30, talks about transportation. So over the last number of years, we've been trying to purchase buses. So the VDOE recommendation replacement cycle is for 15 years. So we keep our buses for 15 years. And we have 52 buses that will need to be replaced over the next 5 years. So this, the $2 million here would put us in a cycle to be able to replace that number of buses that need to be replaced over the next 5 years. I do have to say that our mechanics do a nice job maintaining our fleet, so there is no worry whatsoever that the buses that we have on the road are unsafe for students. And you'll see a few other things here. So about 4 or 5 rows down, you'll notice replace driver's education car. We are one of the only school divisions in our area that actually does driver's education for our students, which I think is a great service for our students and our community. So. And then the total for transportation would be at $3 million. But again, remember our CIP committee, our Budget and Finance Committee is going to meet on February the 2nd to review this.
Does the transportation subcommittee do anything about the recommendations, or?
So they haven't, but we can in the near future, yes. Most of their stuff is based on age of vehicle or equipment. So one of the things you may notice on our on the request is a tire changer, and our mechanics are actually doing that manually now. So this would help with efficiency and with potential workers' comp claims. And then we have a few asks for our athletics. And at the very bottom of that slide, you will notice that it's a $5.9 million ask, or almost $6 million, and then urgent and necessary was a little over $5.5 million. And then the final, I'm sure you cannot read this, but I wanted you to be able to see all of the projects on one page. Yes, I know. You need my glasses? But, so it's nice to be able to see everything all together instead of in, 7 different slides or 5 or whatever that was, so. And then the last slide for, I think it's the last slide for capital improvement is what has been funded over the last 13 years. So you will notice that fiscal year 23 that we requested 0 and we received 0 for capital improvement, and that's because we received quite a bit of CARES funding that we put towards our CIP project. So and we also were spending this $4.2 million that the county gave us in fiscal year 22. So we were using CARES funds and those funds, which was close to $10 million at the end of the day on how much money we spent over those couple of years on capital improvements. So, but when you have buildings that are the age of our buildings and major renovations, the last major renovation being 20 years ago, we're going to have some needs, capital improvement needs to be able to maintain our facilities. And I think we've done a nice job. So it's continuing to maintain our facilities over the next many years. All right, so now on to budget process and information. So on slide 36, you will see the Code of Virginia that talks to the duty of the superintendent and the school board to submit a needs-based budget. There are 9 in this code. It talks about classifications. 9 major classifications are prescribed by the Board of Education, and we use 6 of the major classifications. So our categories that we use are instruction, administration, health and attendance, pupil transportation, operations and maintenance, and technology. So we use all 5 of those categories, but we also use the 6th category of food service. But since food service is self-funded, it's kind of its own separate category. The 7th category is facilities, and it includes activities concerned with acquiring land and building, and at this time we do not utilize this category. The 8th category is debt and is used for principal and interest payments for debt service, and we do not have any such debt, and we do not use this category. And then the 9th category is contingency reserve, and we do not use that category either. So we do use 5: instruction, administration, attendance and health, pupil transportation, operations and maintenance, and technology, and a 6th category, which is its own separate category, as food service. And the timeline of preparing the budget, it says that the division should submit our budget to the Board of Supervisors by the first day of April. And if everything works out as planned, we should have our budget submitted to the Board of Supervisors on March the 14th. And following is our timeline. So you will notice in October, we met with the Budget and Finance Committee to talk about the upcoming budget and get the process started. And then over the next several months, from November until December, we met with our department managers and our school principals to identify their budget priorities. And then on December the 20th, Governor Youngkin introduced his proposed 2024-2026 biennium budget. And then you'll see at the top of that list, February 8th, the superintendent proposes the fiscal year 2025 budget. And then there are work sessions. The General Assembly concludes on March the 9th. And then on March the 14th, the school board should approve a budget. And then the school board will have another opportunity to look at the budget on April the 22nd, after the Board of Supervisors meet and adopt their budget and tax rate. The dates on this calendar for the Board of Supervisors will be approved at the Board of Supervisors meeting tomorrow, so they are tentative at this time. So where do our funds come from? So preparing a budget is like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. We get funds from federal, state, local, and then other funds from grants and trusts. So you will notice federal is the least revenue that we receive, about 1.4 million. State is the most revenue we receive at 45 million, and then local operational is 32 million, technology is almost 500,000, and then capital improvement last year, or for this current fiscal year, is 1.57 million. And then other, which I said earlier, are grants and trusts, things like that, $276,000 from other. So as I mentioned earlier, the governor presented his proposed budget on December the 20th. However, both the House and the Senate are preparing their budgets now, and ultimately the governor, the House, and the Senate have to approve a budget. You know, they have to work together to get a final budget, and the General Assembly concludes about two months from now, so on March the 20th. Last year, the General Assembly ended up adopting a skinny budget in April of 2023, and then they reconvened in September to pass their final budget, final fiscal year 2024 budget. And actually this week there were 220 budget amendments released by the General Assembly, so last week. So hopefully we'll have state information before we adopt our budget on March the 14th. So if you look at this slide, over the last, that's 7 years, you will see that our federal funds have stayed about the same, except for in 2021, 2022, and there were some CARES funds that were put in our operating budget during that year. So our federal funds are about 1.7% of our total revenue.
I'm sorry, and that's basically the food, right? Is that mostly the food?
So no, No, Ms. Stein, do you want to, what federal revenue do we receive?
So basically, it's Title VI for special ed.
Oh,
Is the big chunk of it, yes. Everything that you're seeing tonight is our operating budget.
Okay.
We're not including that food service budget.
Yeah. And food service is self-funded, so they support themselves by the money they receive for lunches served, breakfast and lunch served, so. Any other questions about federal? State funds. State funds make up about 54% of our budget, and it's divided into 4 revenue accounts. So we have our standards of quality, which is based on our local composite index. Our local composite index for this biennium increased about 4% from the last biennium. So, which means that our locality ability to pay has increased. So that means we'll receive less state funds than we have in based on our composite index for the standards of quality. And you can see the chart to the right shows the 3 factors that the local composite index is based on. It's based on true property value, adjusted gross income, and taxable retail sales. And you'll see all 3 of those categories increased. Taxable retail sales increased the least amount, but the true property value increased pretty significantly. And we're talking about billions of dollars and not millions. So like true value of real property increased 1.5 billion. Adjusted gross income increased by 450 million, and then taxable retail sales increased by about 55 million. Incentive program accounts are programs that are not required by the standards of quality, but do provide benefits to our students, like the academic year governor school. The 3rd category is categorical program accounts, and this is for particular educational needs like homebound or career and technical education. And then 4th is our lottery funded accounts, which are funds that we receive from lottery sales. And examples of lottery-funded programs are our at-risk programs, early reading intervention, and our K-3 class size reduction program. Any question about our state funds before I move on? And the next slide show our state funds, and you'll see there's been a steady increase over the last 7 years to our last 8 years to our state funds. And this is just highlights the items that Governor Youngkin introduced in his biennial budget. I'm not going to go through these, but I will highlight a couple. Provide a 1% bonus for instructional and support positions for fiscal year 25, and then a 2% compensation supplement for instructional and support positions for fiscal year 26. Slide number 45 shows update sales tax revenue. And then moving on to our slide 46 is our local funds. You will notice there's been an increase over the last 8 years in local funding. And over the last couple of years, we expanded our career and technical education opportunities for our students. We added HVAC and occupational physical therapy aid. We, as Ms. Rutt said, we spent a significant amount of money reducing our healthcare premiums and adjusting pay to be competitive with those school systems that surround us. Fiscal year 22, which was 2 years ago, we were able to adjust salaries for our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our bus drivers, custodians, and nurses. And this past year, we adjusted salary scales for our food service employees. And then we have also given some COLA pay increases along the way as well. Any questions about local, state? And then the next slide are expenditures. So where does our money go? And in front of you, you have two ways to look at our expenditures. To the left, you will see we spend 75% of our budget on instruction. And then you can see the other percentages there. Technology is 2.7, operations and maintenance is 8.5, transportation is 7.6, and then administration, attendance, and health is 6.2. And those are the categories that I was speaking about earlier that we're required to, our budget's required to have these categories. Or you can look at our budget on how much do we spend in materials and supplies and so on and so forth. 89% of our budget goes towards salaries and benefits for our people. 3% materials and supplies. Capital outlay is less than 1%. Principal and interest is less than 1%. Professional services is less than 3%. Miscellaneous fees is less than 3%. Questions? All right, so a couple more slides. So what's our,
Just about perfectly.
yeah, so what's our focus for 2025, for fiscal year 2025? So on slide 49, you will see salaries, health insurance. We anticipate an increase in our health insurance. We would like to continue to decrease employees' contribution. There are several positions that we need due to class size or because they're required. Reading specialist is required due to our Literacy Act. We need additional 2 elementary teachers, 3rd and 5th grade at Honey Run Elementary School. Those class sizes are fairly large. 1 at middle school, that's North Fork Middle School. I think it's math. OT, occupational therapy, physical therapy teacher position. Last year it was paid by the Claude Moore Trust. And if we want to continue to offer that program, we need to fund that teacher position. We need a 1-to-1 parapro for a student with a disability. I'm not sure which school that is. I think it may be W.W. Robinson Elementary School. And then 2 van drivers for students with disabilities, for students who are going outside Shenandoah County for their instruction. We would like to increase our driver's education instructor pay. Currently, our teachers are making $35 per hour for any after school activities that they do, and our driver's ed teachers are making $25 an hour. And all I have to say is that is probably one of the jobs that would be fairly stressful, is getting in a car with kids who are just getting their driver's license. So we would like to increase that pay. That's about $50,000, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the positions and purchase services paid for by CARES funds, and you see the list there. So we have 9 student support specialists, a FAP coordinator, a 504 coordinator, half FTE, full-time equivalent of a maintenance secretary, nurse coordinator, drama teacher, and then software purchase services, and then we increased our substitute budget as well. All of those things were either paid for by CARES or supplemented by CARES. And then also budget inflationary factor for, our fuel has went down slightly, but it's still up from where it was a couple of years ago, and we haven't put any inflationary factor on fuel over the last 2 years. Is that right, Angie?
We did put a little bit in last
Okay.
year, but not significant.
So that's transportation, maintenance, annual software costs are increasing, mandatory valuations, and then mandatory audit requirements. So. And then here are the next steps. So on February the 8th, I'll propose a budget. On February 26th, you will talk about that proposed budget, and we'll have a public hearing on the budget. March the 4th, the school board will meet with the Board of Supervisors. That meeting's at 1 o'clock. It's not required for school board members, but if you're able to attend, you're encouraged to. And then on March the 14th is final school board budget approval. Well, school board budget approval, and then final is April the 22nd. So a lot will happen between now and April 22nd. Any questions on anything that was presented?
I don't want to drill down too much, but the second to the last slide there where it has the student support specialist and then the other, I know we're going to be considering what they've done, how they're needed, and maybe how they can be retained and financed, sourced, funded. But the 5 positions below that, those folks are aware that they're working basically with sunset funds, right?
So I'm going to have to let somebody else answer that because these positions were moved from our operations budget to CARES funding before I got here. So Angie or Linda?
That was after me.
Yeah.
Before me too.
I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe you.
So the FACT and the 504 coordinator were currently in our local budget before CARES money came. We had a deficit, so we moved those positions into CARES funding. I do not know that those folks would know if their position is in, I don't know what that conversation was. The thought process was always that we would put them back into the operation budgets. The other 3 positions were all part-time positions. And so we moved them to full-time when CARES money came. One, because all of the maintenance things that came with the CARES money, we needed a full-time person because a lot of the CIP stuff that we had going on. The drama position to make it equal to the other 2 middle schools, because that's at Norfolk Middle School. And then the nurse coordinator, we were dealing with COVID and we needed a full-time nurse coordinator. So thus, those 3 positions were moved to full-time.
So we probably need to get a little ahead of this in that discussions with those folks about the fact that this is technically going to dry up. And even in staff planning, how critical those positions are to see how much we have to invest ourselves in retaining them if that's what we want to do. And some way to figure that out in terms of budget requests and requirements as well. So I just don't want somebody to be caught short and like, I didn't know I was leaving and I got, you know.
I agree.
Okay, thanks.
And that's this year, right? So it's right up for next year. So it's paid for
Yes.
throughout this year.
Yes.
Any other questions from the school board? Okay.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, well, in just a second, I'm going to contemplate calling a recess of the meeting here. The next special meeting, we'll be hearing from anyone who has to speak on the budget. And Rhonda, I see you sitting over there. Are you going to be speaking? Okay. So what we'll do is then we will, if I hear a motion for recess, we'll recess the work session that we are working on currently at the present moment. And then we will immediately convene the school special session for public comments on the budget. And when that is done, then we'll end that meeting and then we'll go back to the meeting that we're currently operating on. So do I hear a motion that we recess the work session?
I move we recess this pre-budget work session.
Here, second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Street?
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's just one speaker, what I would incline to do is let the speaker speak, and then take a short break before we reconvene in the meeting. So, I think, so now the work session is in recess, and I'm going to call to order the Shenandoah County School Board pre-budget public hearing of January 22nd, 2024. And I call that meeting at 7:32. Do I hear a motion from the board to approve the agenda as presented?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the pre-budget public hearing on funding requests. We are ready for public comment. And before we do that, I guess it's necessary that I read. So Rhonda, you might as well take a break while I read these things, but I'm okay. I know, you probably say it by heart, but I'm going to read it anyway. So, the public hearing was scheduled for Monday, January 22nd, 2024 at 7:30 in the County Board of the Shenandoah County Government Center, 600 North Main Street, Woodstock, for the Shenandoah County School Board to receive news of citizens within the school district in accordance with Section 22.1-92B of the Code of Virginia regarding the 2024-25 estimate of monies needed for public schools. Rhonda, actually, I'm going to break here before I go on with these. The discussion that you're going to give is pertinent to the budget, correct? Absolutely. Okay, thank you. Prior to the superintendent's proposed budget for fiscal year 25, the 2024-25 school year, a public hearing is held to receive feedback from the community. The Shenandoah County School Board welcomes public comment during most regular meetings and during public hearings. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting or hearing. Each speaker may speak up to 3 minutes. The board generally allows up to 30 minutes for public comments on agenda and non-agenda items at the beginning of the meeting. If there are a large number of speakers, the board may limit the total time for comments and/or may reduce the time allotted for each speaker. All comments should address a matter related to Shenandoah County Public Schools. Complaints regarding division employees should be directed to the school principal or an appropriate school division official. The school board expects that each speaker will be courteous, modeling for our students how one can respectfully disagree with others' views. Speakers will address their comments to the entire school board and not to one individual school board member, to the superintendent, to a staff member, nor to the audience. Speakers will not engage in personal attacks. Speakers may sign up to speak at the school board meeting or public hearing on a document provided by the clerk of the school board. Speakers are invited in the order in which they signed up. If time allows, the chair may allow comments from individuals who have not signed up. A speaker may not speak more than once on a specific topic. Speakers who wish to speak on more than one topic must submit a separate request for each item. And since I'm not going to read the written comments portion, Marta, you're all ready to go. You signed up? Okay, good.
All right.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Shepard, Chairman Barlow, and board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Rhonda Richard, and I live in Quicksburg. As we enter into next year's budget talks, let me remind you that your financial support comes from taxpayers. Taxpayers in Shenandoah County are hurting, and unless you're employed by SCPS, you are not getting those 5 and 6% pay raises. I was contacted a few days ago by an SCPS employee. This person stated that SCPS has non-working whiteboards, projectors, and desks in rooms that date back to the early 1990s. Some even have computers that need upgrades or replacing, but not having funds available, they will need to wait until next year. I have obtained via FOIA request the following email. Let me read a portion. I'm sending this email to you with the first day of our School Administrator Institute. You may have heard that we are planning a multi-year professional development institute for building administrators. This first year will be a learning journey for us all. The goal is to establish a strong, knowledgeable, and highly skilled leadership team that functions at a high level and is fully supported every day. The reality is that we have an incredible opportunity over the course of the next year to evaluate the success of our school system, maybe more than we ever have. The first phase of the Institute will be July 10th, 12th, 14th. Each day will be organized around an essential goal or focus area for the division. Day 1, July 10th, we will focus on team building and establishing common expectations. Laurel Ridge Community College, Luray. Day 2, July 12th, will focus on culture, climate, and conduct. Day 3, July 14th, will focus on instructional leadership. On July 10th, we will meet at Laurel Ridge Community College in Luray at 8 a.m. We will spend the morning in productive conversation and activities and have lunch about 11:30. After lunch, we will transition to Shenandoah River Outfitters and enjoy a canoeing trip on the Shenandoah River at 1 o'clock. Talk about team building. This email was sent by Dr. Heimgartner on June 14th. If this is for school administration, why did it include directors of finance and HR, among others from the school board office? Not all admins were even in attendance. When will SBH do team building and bonding with teachers, drivers, paraprofessionals within the schools? As a school board member told me, it's not like they were sitting around having bonbons, it's not like they were sitting around drinking mimosas and getting massages. Well, it sure seems like a good time on our dime. I was also told that several businesses do this yearly. I agree, but not on taxpayers' backs. I often question how SCPS can find the funds when it's something that they feel is needed, but when it's something that teachers and staff or students need, they don't have a problem asking the community. Parents are literally hit the first week of school with fundraisers and are asked to supply meals to athletes and field trips, etc. The SAI included rental of canoes to the tune of $585. What skill was taught or learned floating down the river? 3 days of lunches, 40 meals billed per day, and only 25 people in attendance. The total for this taxpayer bill was $3,122.38. I know at my house we live within our means. Maybe Shenandoah County Public Schools could learn to do the same. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Richards. I'm seeing nobody else ready to speak, so I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. We are in recess from our first meeting, and what I would like to do is recommend that we reconvene in 6 minutes at 7:45. Does that work for everybody? You need a little bit more time. What do you think?
That's good.
That's good? All right. So the meeting will reconvene at 7:45 right here. So 8:47, we are coming back from our recess, from our work session meeting prior to the special meeting. And we are about to discuss 3.2, the policy on ensuring privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents. Dr. Shepard, do you have any introductory remarks before we discuss?
Just a few.
Okay.
So at the January 2nd school board organizational meeting, 2 school board members requested adding the model policy and ensuring privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Virginia's public schools, and proposed resolution and revisions to the model policy to the January 11th meeting. And so we added it to the January 11th school board meeting, and now we're here to discuss it. So the recommendation was to introduce the policy at the January 11th meeting, and it's for discussion at tonight's meeting. So that's all I have.
Thank you. We are operating under modified Roberts rules in that we are not conducting the regular school board meeting, and the work session is designed for more give and take on discussion, and so we're going to be discussing this without making motions and without having an issue on the floor. The idea is to just generate the discussion about the topic at hand. I'd like to give a little background, kind of what I hope it's a factual background on how we got here and what our charge is, and then what I would intend to do, since as Mrs. Carlinia was the one who has developed a proposal here, is to ask her to kick off the discussion, and then from there we'll see where it goes, realizing that we also have the model policies on the transgender issue also available for scrutiny, and it's been up online. So we'll have the VDOE, so-called Youngkin administration model, and then we'll be discussing Mrs. Carlinia's model. So I'll try to be brief, but I think our goal here is to create a standalone policy which fulfills Virginia Code 22.1-23.3, and to establish protection, conditions, definitions, and requirements relating to the recognition, status, and rights of both transgender and binary students. The assumption is that the Constitution of Virginia Code and this policy can ensure that all students can depend on protection and rights by following requirements and guidelines relating to the identification and treatment of transgender students. Both groups, binary and transgender students and communities, are concerned with safety, rights, and equitable access to educational activities. A previous set of 27 model policies by Governor Northam was based on 8 short conditions that make up that Virginia Code. And so those conditions are required by law. However, those 8 short conditions gave rise to 27 pages of model policies by the Northam administration. Various school divisions treated those model policies in various ways. Some basically ignored them, and others were very aggressive at implementing them, and it was kind of a checkerboard across the state. And it doesn't come as a shock to anybody around this table that there was differences of opinions on our school board that did not give rise to any particular action, but the default was to proceed as we had been proceeding, and with the passage, or with the election of Governor Youngkin, he came out with his version through the VDO&E, which was his model policies, which we have online today as a model, has been reviewed by Attorney General Miyares. Some people have adopted the Youngkin, I'll call it the Youngkin administration model. One of those counties, for instance, is Bedford, which took it verbatim and has implemented it. Many others, including Shenandoah, have not passed it, and the goal would be, if we passed a policy, to have a standalone policy that would not be tied to anything that had been done prior. In other words, rather than having a default position, we would select a position or create or pass a policy that we voted on, becomes a standalone, if you will. The case, or the situation has been thrown into some interesting, I won't say turmoil, but into some gray area in the Grimm versus Gloucester County School Board case of 2020, in which the court found in favor of a case brought by a transgender student, yet the 2-to-1 decision, the facts of that particular case, and then the Fourth Circuit Court, which eroded some of it, have given us, or have led us to a position where I don't think anybody believes that any policy is going to be free from target of lawsuits or criticism. But it's our duty to find our way through that. So with that short introduction, I'm going to ask Mrs. Carlino to give us a brief on her proposal.
Okay. Well, do you all have the copy of the, well, hopefully you all have a copy of the, I don't know if you have a copy of the proposal, the draft policy. Basically, what we have done here is a two-part. There's a resolution part, and then you'll see the exhibit side after that. The resolution part of it basically states, if you go look at the Youngkin policy right now, prior to him giving the actual policy on what it is, which is what we do in the Exhibit A, he actually does cite a lot of this same constitutional amendments and same codes, Virginia codes, that we're actually doing in the resolution as well, in the yes, resolution part of it. The reason we have done this, if you read at the Youngkin, and let me just first say, we went to the SBMA conference in November, and we had the assistant deputy of Secretary of Education there, and they talked about how they did this for over 8 months. They actually debated how to come up with these policies. So it was thoroughly vetted. There's probably not going to be any other document that is more vetted than this. And then it was followed up by an opinion by Attorney General Miyares, which explains why there hasn't been any lawsuit whatsoever challenging this. In fact, the only lawsuits that have come out of this is some boards have been sued for not passing this. And once they do decide to pass it, then the lawsuits have been dropped. But those are the only lawsuits that have come out of this. For the resolution and the draft that I actually presented, it's not only modeled on those policies, but I've actually had some other attorneys actually look at it as well. And one of them is the one that I'm going to pass around. This information is a memorandum on the Grimm decision that Dennis just alluded to. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that. But the reason we did this is because if you read the Youngkin policies, the very first paragraph says that each school board shall adopt policies that are consistent with, but may be more comprehensive than, this sample policy. So they're actually asking us to be more comprehensive to the extent that we can. I am not going to guess, but I can give my opinion as to why the Youngkin policy is the way it is. I'm sure that he was trying to appeal to a lot of other school boards that may not have a majority conservatives. They may be split. So my guess is he was trying to appeal to those school boards. As of right now, the last count that I heard, at least 14 school districts have passed this or adopted it. There may be a few more because they don't know about the smaller school districts in other parts of the state. 9 have rejected it. Usually those are Fairfax, Loudoun, all of those. And interestingly, when I was talking to somebody about this last week, I guess Richmond and the Youngkin administration were actually asking what's going on with Shenandoah County. So we told them we're actually considering it right now. So they are keeping an eye on this. I do have, we can actually go through this one by one and kind of explain where we are different. The differences are kind of mostly procedural in some areas. I just kind of changed around some of the definitions to make sure that they flowed better. The biggest differences are, especially in the end of the draft, you'll see the athletic teams and athletic events and then no punitive actions. What that refers to is, the first one is about protecting our girls' sports. Basically saying that biological males should not be competing against our girls. I understand, some people have asked, why not do it the other way? Well, First of all, we understand that, yeah.
Let me, this
Sure.
is just for clarification. So I value what you're doing now is crosswalking this with the model policy. And so if you can be a little bit more patient with us as to
Okay,
where you are
that's
and where
fine.
we're going.
Yeah.
Because one thing I want to know is where your proposal deviates from the model
Oh, sure.
policy, okay?
Yeah, and we can go, yeah,
okay,
we'll
good.
go over that. I was just kind of giving just an outlook as to what we were,
Go for it, whatever you want.
yeah. Just trying to make it a little bit more explicit in that sense. And the other one was with the no punitive actions. This came out of some of the cases that we've had in other places like Loudoun County where there was retaliation against a teacher that was not recognizing a pronoun. So that is just to kind of give you an outlook of where there's a few other differences, but we can go through them. But basically, those are the main differences between them. So what we were trying to do is just be a little bit more comprehensive. But in the end, if you all just want to pass the model policies, that's a win. I mean, that's at the very minimum what we should be doing. And I hope that at least we'll do that. I was just hoping that as a board, we could actually go into this and hopefully look into making it a little bit more comprehensive. In the end, this is not targeting anybody. This is more about protecting our girls and protecting our staff from any kind of retaliation. Those are the only differences between them. I did want to mention about the Grimm case, and I passed that information, that memo that it was given to me by the SBMA. And Josh Hasler was the attorney that actually did this. He's the one who also looked at our sanctuary and provided some feedback that I incorporated into the draft already. So whatever he told me, I went ahead and did that. And you can read a little bit about what the differences are. And one of the things that kind of sticks out right away is that this case for Grimm was in 2020. This was before the situation that we had in Loudoun County. And in this particular case, we're talking about a girl who was transitioning to be a boy. Whereas what we're trying to do with our resolution is protect girls from biological males that haven't transitioned into a sport or a sports system, the sports field or the bathrooms or the locker rooms. It does provide, I mean, as you can see from the policy, if you guys have read it, is they do say, you know, there are specific instances where if there is a kid that has a birth certificate that has been changed or there's a court order, we have to deal with that. We just have to go ahead and accommodate that. This is mostly for cases that fall outside of those definitions. So that's just kind of a quick overrun over that. And we can, I have both the Youngkin, the sanctuary, and also the differences in case we want to go ahead and go through those.
Other members?
I'll speak.
Mr. Rickard?
First of all, Gloria, thank you for coming up with this. I've heard through email from staff, parents, grandparents. I've heard both sides, for and against. The thing I find ironic, because I didn't know anything about this Grimm case until our last school board meeting, it was thrown up several times. And I was curious whether, after reading it, thank you for providing that to Dr. Shepard. After reading over it, I was wondering if the people that were even throwing it up at the school board meeting even knew what it involved, because I had no clue. It was a girl transitioning to be a boy, had gone through a double mastectomy. The parents were in favor of this, so it falls under Governor Youngkin's policies. The school had to recognize her as a boy. The state went as far as reissuing her birth certificate as a male. To me, it was no question. But I think what I like about what Gloria has done here is it protects kids like Grimm, but it also protects us as a school division. It protects our staff. The funny thing was, I got an email recently from a grandparent. It sounds like her granddaughter already graduated our school system, but at a young age decided she was a boy. To me, those parents and grandparents should, I don't know if they've actually read this, because it doesn't sound like they have, because this protects their kids as well as our kids or anybody else's kids. It protects everybody, so I say great job. I've passed it on to 2 different pastors that I know. The pastors have read it. I kind of like to look at biblical values. Is this pointing anybody out? Is this bullying anybody? I can't find it in there. I think it's worth looking at and worth talking about.
Mrs. Russ?
Yeah, first off, I can appreciate the work that went into this. And I agree, I think something a little bit more comprehensive probably needs to be done. However, with that said, I am not a fan of the resolution part. School boards, the last resolution I can remember the school board doing was the George Floyd resolution for Black Lives Matter, and you know, at that point, I was like, guys, you all have other things to do. That foundation paved the way for the changing of a school name that hung on the side of the building since 1958. For me, it pretty much said, hey, everybody that's in support of this, you're a bunch of racists, and I had an issue with it. With this one, to be honest with you, I don't find it, I mean, we're talking about kids that are struggling, well, let's just say this, we're still talking about kids. I don't think the resolution one is something that the school board should take a position on in declaring a sanctuary city for parent rights. Because everything that's outlined in it basically looks to me like we are protecting the rights of parents that agree with us and not necessarily the parents that are going through the struggle of having kids with a mental health issue. And if you haven't had a kid that has not struggled with issues of that nature, God bless you. I didn't find this to be anything close, the resolution part, to be, what's the terms here? To have, to be respectful. I didn't think it was respectful at all. I didn't think we would be treating kids with dignity at all. And the resolution part for me is something that there's some great parts in it that I think that we can put into hard policy that actually can be backed up, put in black and white. A resolution has no legal teeth to it at all. It just is a statement. So, you know, Dennis mentioned Bedford. I think Rockingham and both Harrisonburg City just passed the transgender policies as they stood. I think it's Bedford has got a nice policy that touches, that's real short. That's Hanover. That's Hanover is real short and to the point. Bedford's is a little bit more involved, and it talks to the bullying and harassment. It talks to the identification of students. It requires something of the transgender student. And I agree with you. A lot of this got kicked off a couple years ago, not only by Grimm, but with the events in Loudoun County. And unfortunately, the media had a field day with it. And like the media does, it doesn't tell everything. And it presents one side, whether you're listening to CNN or whether you're listening to Fox. Both sides of the same coin. So I found doing some research today, I found this is called a report on the misconduct of, gosh, I lost it here, of Loudoun County. And it was done by Blankenship and Keith out of Fairfax. And there's some interesting things about Loudoun County's case. First of all, the kid, the assailant, was a troubled youth. He had sent nudes in the 5th grade to other kids. He had a long-standing line. He was a frequent flyer, and he lived separately from his parents, or he lived with his mother. His father was out of state. But there's a lot of things. He said he was pansexual, but he did things that even his mother said required, had attention, needed attention. And he was just struggling. Now, the thing is during that assault in the bathroom, him and that young lady had already met and had consensual sex at the school once. He used pronouns, he liked girls. So the thing is I don't want to start going, gosh, we need to target, and I don't want to say target. We need to protect ourselves from transgender students because of some of the stuff that happened in Loudoun County. Grimm deserves to be responded to. For me, I would like to see the policy shredded of the resolution. I would like for us not to use what the news is saying and take a hard look at what goes on and how it will protect kids. Transgenders, kids struggling with those identities, should be able to produce certain things. They should be able to be under treatment. They should be treated, in my opinion, like our 504s. They're asking for accommodations. Those 504s require medical backup, they require parent backup, they require teachers, they require input, they require parent input. I would like to see something that says, hey, if you're struggling with this, we'll set up a meeting and have a meeting. You don't want to tell your parents? Let's do it in a safe environment. Let's have that conversation. If you truly need to work through this, then let's help you with it. But at that point, I don't think that we need to just take anybody willy-nilly off on any Wednesday or off day who's going, you know what, I'm showing up in a dress tomorrow, and we'll see if Mr. Dorman kicks me out of the bathroom again. That's not fair either. So I think it needs to be addressed. And I think there's some things that, we talk about. It's a bigger issue than just the bathrooms. The locker rooms, I don't know what VHSL says about that. I mean, we participate in the Virginia High School League. Are we going to just say, we're just not going to participate anymore? If you put one of our girls up against a guy, a biological man, then, we have a problem with it. Those are deeper issues, I think, for me, that need to be considered. We can also, start tying in some other policies, such as, what our staff is doing. We ran off a orchestra teacher, a talented one, because once somebody in the community happens to be part of this community that's influential, said, hey, there is your lineup for the Christmas concert has got too many Christian stuff in it. We turn around a couple months later and have one of our band teachers put an LBGT flag out on the field at homecoming. We have a teacher that, from my understanding, will ask you to hide a crucifix. We have teachers that ask for pronouns at the beginning of their semester. There are things that we should probably be looking at in how we interact with our students to say, look, we're here to support you, but we're going to stay out of this for the most part. Unless you end up in the counselor's office and you need help, you're struggling with it, we care about you, and we're going to help you out. but we're not going to start pushing agendas one way or the other. The left would be completely upset with this if we start baptizing kids after school. And we should address the fact that there are a lot of things going on. We're here for reading, writing, arithmetic, and we need to get back to the basics, but there needs to be some lines drawn. But like I said, I think it needs to be addressed, but I'm not crazy about the resolution part.
Could I,
Mr. Rickard?
the only reason I'm asking, forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm asking for clarification. The last minute or so, were you condoning meeting with children without their parents if they were struggling with this?
No, my condoning would be, let's bring your parents in and have a conversation.
I thought you said, but if the kid's not okay with that, you would meet with the
No,
kids?
no,
Okay.
no, that's not, no.
Okay.
We should never hide anything from our kids, from our parents, and, you know, unless there's proof of abuse or something along that line. And if I said something out of line, please excuse me, but no. If they are struggling with their identity, there's a good chance a counselor knows about it. Somebody knows about it. We have, 9 support specialists. You know, we can set up a meeting with parents to say, hey, we need to have a conversation about what's going on in your kid's life.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the school board? You gentlemen haven't spoken yet. Do you want to? Mr. Street, no? Mr. Cuttrell?
I guess I would say a lot of what Ms. Rutt said, I agree with, especially with the resolution part. I do think there are some positives from Ms. Carlenio's proposal. I guess where I'm at personally right now is I think I'm more in favor of going with just what Youngkin proposed, but at the same time, I do see parts of the other proposal that we could integrate or whatever it may be, because there are, in my view, there are some positives. But again, with the resolution, I don't know how I feel with that. I think what you said was kind of right. You know, you look back to the previous resolution that was made by this board, and I don't know how much significance or standing it really has. I think the main thing is we get it right with the policy. And like you mentioned, Rockingham, and there are other boards that are currently looking at this or have recently looked at this. So right now I'm more with kind of the governor's proposal, but at the same time I'd be open to looking at somehow working in some parts of the other one and making it what it needs to be, because you could argue that there is a lot of room for improvement in the governor's policy and proposal. So it's just a matter of us figuring out what we would want to integrate into this one. So again, I do appreciate your input and your policy. We have received a lot of feedback. We've received emails. I've heard from different people, phone calls, texts, conservatives, liberals, people that I know. And on this topic, obviously it's a hot topic. It's something that's a bit controversial. We've seen it nationwide. We've seen it statewide. And it is important that we protect all of our students, but we also have to protect the staff in our buildings with, there's a lot going on here, and we have to make sure we're always protecting them and making sure that they're not being put in a tough spot because of what we're asking them to do. So that's kind of where I'm at, but again, I'm open for suggestions, and I think we could definitely make something work here, and we just want to make sure we get it right and we can leave it how it is and then kind of move forward and have something in place, because I expect other counties will be doing this throughout the year after the elections and all that. Rockingham, if you said 2 years ago when the governor was elected that they would have something like this in place, they would say, they wouldn't believe it. But in an election, they have some new people and they saw the value in the governor's policy. So, and I believe it was adopted exactly. I can't say for sure, but if not, very similar.
Can I? Can I?
You can, what I was going to do was, I was figuring I would finish off for the school and then give you the last word to come to talk. So,
Well,
but if you want to go now with a brief, go ahead.
Yeah, and I fully appreciate what you just said, and that's literally what we're here for, to kind of go through this and decide what's in, what's out, what we want to change. A lot of what Ms. Rutt said, I think a lot of it was all over the place. I mean, there's a lot of policies that, yeah, that would be a good idea to work on those, but that's not what this is doing. This is actually a very specific policy that is dealing with very specific issues. One of the things that I would like to know, and I have asked before, because again, if you actually read through the resolution, I mean, you can see that a lot of the references are First Amendment, 14th Amendment, 14th Amendment, protection of people's rights. You know, they're all codes, they're all parts of the law, and we're basically put them in there just to say this is what we're basing our policy on. I see it more, I mean, a resolution, like you said, it's not law. It's mostly a statement. I see it a lot more like, for example, we had the Declaration of Independence. That's not the law. It just kind of gave the guidance to everything that happened afterwards in the Constitution. Likewise here, the idea of the resolution and this resolution and the policy are to give the school board, the school district, the policy and the ideas of how to develop those regulations going forward. So that was the reason behind doing this. One thing that I did want to say before I asked the question was regarding the Loudoun County case. It's a little bit irrelevant whether the kid in Loudoun County was cisgender, transgender, or whatever. That what happened was a kid used that to get into a bathroom. He put on a skirt and got into the bathroom, and bad things happened. So this is kind of taking care of that, because if a transgender student wants to go into that bathroom, then at least we're requiring that that student is really proving by a court order or birth certificate that they are indeed that. So this actually takes care of that case and that problem that they had in Loudoun County. But since, like Mr. Gottschall said, what we're here to do is kind of discuss this and what can we include, what can we take out. Maybe it would be a good idea for Ms. Rutz to decide to say what parts of the resolution are not acceptable to you. I mean, what areas in there are saying that we're not welcoming to kids that are transgender or that are different from other kids?
Okay. Actually, do you have a short response to that?
Yeah, all of it. None of the
First Amendment, the Second
Okay,
Amendment?
clarification.
The 14th
Where are we?
Amendment doesn't
Hold
say
it.
anything about kids.
Mrs. Rutz?
Yes.
Are we talking just now about the resolution? Or
Yes,
we
just the
okay.
resolution.
Okay, I want to
Just
make
the
sure we know where,
resolution.
okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, the 14th Amendment doesn't say anything about, it talks about life, liberty, and it talks about, and here's the thing, life and liberty is also entitled to those folks that we don't agree with. So, I don't have to like what you say, I just have to defend it. That's what America's about. But I don't think the resolution is needed. I think it's as I told you, it's a broad statement. The Declaration of Independence was preceded by war. I mean, we were a bunch of insurrectionists at that point, and we have ended up with a great country afterwards.
Right, so that would be a point for this, if I may say that. Well, I mean, and this is why actually we put the resolution, because like right now you mentioned the 14th Amendment, and what it does here, it actually cites the case that was found, that was based on the 14th Amendment to say that it protects the rights of parents to direct the upbringing of their children. So that's what this does. It actually educates people as to why and where we came from, these ideas. This is the law. That's what this is doing. It's establishing that so when people read it, they can say, well, it's not just the 14th Amendment. It's the 14th Amendment under, Traxel and Granville from 530 U.S. 5765 from the year 2000. So that's what this is doing. So I was just asking more in terms of if there's something in particular that was offensive, or if you're just pretty much saying you don't like the resolution.
No, I don't care for the resolution at all. I don't think it's needed.
Okay, thank you. So what I intend to do is, unless another board member has anything, Mr. Street, in a few minutes, if you're interested, after I have my intervention, Then I'll turn it back to you, Mrs. Carlonia, for summation of your proposal. I think I'm going to start with agreeing with you that the model policies given to us by the Youngkin administration are pretty solid and have not been challenged at this point. And they, even more to the point that they're kind of bulletproof to some extent, is the fact that I like the fact that they protect everybody. There's no victimhood, there's no somebody who's put off to the side or extol. It protects everybody. It protects that student who is transitioning or has become transgender. It protects those students who do not want to be confronted with an unsafe or unsavory situation in sports or in the locker room or in the bathroom. So I think the model policy is sound. And I think you're right. It would be a slam dunk to just do as several of our neighboring counties have already done. However, I do take a point that you made earlier seriously, which is we are invited to make it more comprehensive. I do have a problem with the model policy, in that in order for a student to become registered or accepted as a transgender student, it requires a parental letter to be given to the school system, and then that's pretty not severe, but pretty important ramifications of that, which is then that gender becomes permanent. It takes a lot to change it, and you're kind of stuck with it. And so I'm a little concerned that an overzealous parent could, this is a very, very life-changing situation for somebody to decide to become another biological gender. As much as I believe in parental rights, I believe that they're not absolute. They're critical, but they're not absolute. And so I would like to see some further indication of the seriousness with which the parents and the student are taking this change. And Josh Hetzler, who is indeed the author of this particular piece on interpretation of Grimm, indicates these things that, I forgot, what is Grimm's first name? Anyway, it doesn't matter, but what is it?
Gavin.
Gavin Grimm, thank you. That what he did early on was had undergone hormone injections and gender reassignment surgery. They had a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria by a licensed psychologist. The gender identity was persistent and consistent for years. And so I want to keep from happening a tragedy of somebody who had a bad hair day or somebody insulted them feeling that they now have to have a gender change and that'll solve all the problems in their lives. So I just want to make sure that before a student or a parent make that leap, that we have some expert evidence, whether it's an expert opinion from a doctor or psychologist, or whether it's a history of seeking these kind of surgeries or psychological and other, because there's like 15 things that Gavin Grimm did to make me convinced that she was serious about becoming a she. And that student should be taken seriously, but not, I don't think it should be willy-nilly. That I shouldn't use that term. It shouldn't be so quick and easy so that a parent could make a quick decision, and that one note from a parent winds up changing that kid's life forever. So I would actually toughen it up. That's the way I would make it more comprehensive. However, with the resolution, we're trying to write policy. Policy is what we want to give to the superintendent, to give to the schools to create regulations so that they know how to deal with this. I think there's some great antecedents that you've got here, but it's, sorry, I keep doing this, and it's my life, so I have to, I go back to the military. If I'm given an order and I know what the doctrine is and I follow the doctrine, I'll be successful, and if I'm not, at least I've done what I was supposed to do. But I don't need to be told at that point that I need to be doing this for motherhood, apple pie, and, you know, and that's kind of what the resolution does for me. These are all wonderful antecedents, most of them are. But I just don't think it's necessary in a policy document that just tells people how we want them to set the regulation up. I'm frankly more concerned, and what I would like to hear from you as we conclude here, I'm more concerned about the sanctuary status, because I don't really understand that, Mrs. Carlini, and I'm ready to be convinced of what that would do for us. But my guess is that would seem to create an us versus them mentality that would draw fire on us. And that's my fear about invoking sanctuary status. That's all I have. Any other school board members before Gloria finishes it all for us? If that wouldn't have to be the last word, but okay.
I think Brandy missed one key point about that kid. That kid was moved to a second school, and it happened a second time with a different female who, I don't know whether he had sexual relations with the second girl before, whether it was consensual or whatever, but wherever you got that information from, that kid was convicted twice at 2 different schools. That's why Loudoun County got in the ringer, was they moved that kid.
Well, Loudoun County got in the ringer because of a whole lot of things, the way they handled it. But I sent you the report. He didn't have a dress on that day. They had had sex before, and he also had, assaulted somebody else. It wasn't because he used the transgender umbrella to access a bathroom. They had had sex in that bathroom before. So just this time, she wasn't willing. So that combined with the fact that the way Loudoun County handled it created the firestorm. But, this is what one of the things, and really it was probably more so this than Grimm, that started this firestorm across the state. But I have sent you that. I have sent you the report. You're welcome to look, but it changes what we've heard from the details of what we've heard.
I think another thing, I think we get lost in the fact that it's boys going into girls' bathrooms. We're not looking at the Grimm case. We're not looking at the grandmother that emailed. I'm assuming she emailed us all today. The girls that want to be boys, we have to do something to protect them, whether it's offer them a different bathroom to use, whatever. But picture Grimm going into a bathroom with half a dozen football players in there that find out she's a girl. She's not truly a boy. We have to protect her physically, so we need something in place. The one thing I love about this draft is under letter I of the draft, it protects our staff. Because I can tell you that this has been around a long time. My daughter graduated 3 years ago. And before that, there was a girl she was friends with that decided she was going to be a boy. There was staff that wasn't comfortable with changing that student's name from what they had known for 8 years. We have to protect our staff and the school system as a whole. If the staff doesn't want to participate in the pronoun thing or changing a kid's name, then there's got to be something there to protect them.
Okay. Mr. Gutschall?
Just real quick, Dr. Shepard, Dr. Heingardner, can you give us a quick rundown of what we do have? Because when this came up last year, we decided to just keep going because we thought what we had was adequate. And can you just run through a couple of things? I mean, the bathroom, I know we offer, you have the clinic bathroom, you have the office bathroom. Some things are already in place.
Yeah, so I have some notes here. When the young Northern policy came out, we had non-discrimination. Let me look here. We had policies that actually addressed sensitive information and made sure that we weren't, there we go, non-discrimination, character education, equal educational opportunity, non-discrimination, prohibition against harassment or retaliation, among all other policies that we had already in place that addressed what we needed to. But what we were doing in the schools is that students who felt uncomfortable going to a female restroom or a male restroom because they were transitioning or whatever, went to their clinic restrooms or a restroom in the office, which were single-use restrooms, so only one person could go in there. And actually, we reaffirmed that this summer at the admin advance, where we indicated that students who were transitioning or identifying as transgender would go to single-use restrooms.
I just think it's important to note that, there's some people out there that think neglection or we're being overly disrespectful. And I don't think that's the case, because if you look at what you just said and what's been going on here, we haven't had that issue. I mean, we've had policies and practices in place that we've followed. And whether we do Ms. Carlenio's policy or Governor Youngkin's, or we work them together, that doesn't change anything that we're still doing what we need to do. So I think that's important, that members in the community that think that we have the wrong intent while we're doing this, I think that's important to kind of lay out.
Something quite interesting that came to mind, Dr. Shepard, when you were talking about our policy. Hanover has written a very interesting policy that they adopted just a couple of months ago. Restroom and locker room policy, which flowed from this. But they took an interesting tack, which was students who were identified as transgender students were, of course, allowed to use single-use bathrooms. But so was anybody else in the school who felt that situation threw them into a situation where they felt uncomfortable, which actually diffused the whole situation, because now when you saw somebody going into a single-use bathroom, it didn't signify anything other than they wanted to go to a single-use bathroom. And I asked the chair of their school board, you got like a big line up at the doors? And he said that one of our concerns was people would be 5 deep trying to get to these, and he says it just hasn't happened. So I'm not sure, I'm not suggesting that's particularly a way ahead, but it does suggest to me that treating people equally and not identifying who they are when they walk through that door probably can diffuse a lot of this. Okay.
One thing we need to look at with that policy, I've heard from teachers that are tired of going in the bathroom and having to clean up from kids before they get to use their bathrooms. I was talking we have a kid that plays on soccer team in Strasburg, plays with my son. The mom teaches in Prince William County. We were having this discussion about this policy because I was trying to get input from anybody and everybody from all different counties. And when she heard that kids were allowed to use staff bathroom, she was like flabbergasted. She goes, we have our key. Our key works our bathroom. When we go in there, we flip it to occupied or unoccupied. It's a deadbolt lock, can't be unlocked from the outside. And she's like, kids do not use our bathrooms. If you have this situation, there is one bathroom in the school that kid can go use that's uncomfortable using the male or the female.
I think
we need to look at that, because we have staff here in Shenandoah County that's already told me they're tired of going in the bathroom and cleaning up after others.
Well, I don't know about the cleaning up, but I do know that you raise a point that arose in the Grimm case too, which is that if you have one room and it's too far away to get to, Grimm actually claimed that, he had problems and actually was diagnosed with some problems, infections, et cetera, from not going to the bathroom. So it's going to require some logistics to do, where there is probably more than one if it's a larger school. But it's something I think that the regulations will have to iron out when we get there. I'm assuming that other board members, Tom, you look like you're cogitating. You have anything to say?
Well, everybody really wants me to say something, don't they?
No, you don't.
No, I didn't want you to not be able to say something,
They
so.
just can't take it. I'm just sitting there taking it all in. Well, I'm a bottom line person. I'm probably not the subject with me, I struggle with it. I apologize, I do. Now, number one, mental illness, I fully support. Will not, I fully support that. If a child has some kind of mental illness, we want to help them. So to me, I kind of separate, that and this transgender thing, because I'm not, and I admit I'm not fully educated on this whole thing because I'm a bottom line person, and I apologize, but that's just the way I am. I've said since day one, how come this whole issue, how can we make this issue like alcohol or cigarettes? You can't make a decision until you're 21. I wish the government had more of a backbone to say, you got to be 21 to buy alcohol. Well, you're going to have to be 21 to decide whether you're going to be a girl or boy. Otherwise, it's, pretty much like Governor Youngkin says. So, I really struggle with this because I'm not too much of I use this term a lot, and you'll probably hear it quite a bit. I don't support this pacifying society. And I think a lot of this is what it comes down to. My child today wants to be a girl. My child another day wants to be a boy. And unfortunately, my child next week wants to be a cat. Where do you nip it in the bud? The pacifying society, as I call it. But I understand I guess what weighs on my mind is there's a legal issue to it also. And that's kind of one area that I kind of want to be educated on is, legally, in other words, how far can you take it to where you could be possibly sued or the legality of it? But, I guess.
We can discuss that. I mean, we can do it now, but we can also deal with it.
But I'm probably, but anyway, that's just my take on it. Mental illness, I fully support. Definitely, there needs to be help. But on this topic, I guess I'm more of a, I don't know what to call it. Probably following the lines more of you and Mr. Gutshaw, kind of what you all are thinking. Take Governor Youngkin's policy and maybe if we can tweak it a little bit more stronger. But anyway, that's just my take.
Thank you, Mrs. Street, and Mrs. Carlinio.
Yeah, so again, what we're doing here is basically taking those policies from Youngkin and then just making them a little bit stronger. As I said before, if you have read the Youngkin policies and you have read the whole document, that you'll find most of what this resolution says already in there right before it has the policy. So we just put it in different areas because it is stating in there also this same laws that we're actually basing it on. And the reason to put that in there was so people would know this is what we're basing this on. We're not canceling anyone. We're not canceling transgender students. One of the things that we're doing is, like you said, we're making very, very specific criteria because unfortunately, like you said, the government hasn't taken care of this. And we as a school should not have to be dealing with this, and we should just be educating our kids. But obviously, this is something that has been in the minds of a lot of people, and it's been distracting to a lot of the school systems. So we definitely need to get ahead of this, have a policy. This is not discrimination. This is just protecting the girls and just, putting putting in place something that it makes it very clear what it is that we're going to do moving forward. I may say that right now, just to kind of, because we have been talking about this, but we also are going to do a mental health task force that I mentioned in the paper, and Superintendent Shepherd and I have been starting to talk about it. We're going to have a meeting on March 6th, and we're hoping to start bringing a lot of the people from the community, sheriff's office, police, attorney, Commonwealth attorney, social services, and school members into this mental health task force that will hopefully not just help with this, but also drug addiction and just help our students that are struggling. This, like I said, we're not providing any guidance. We're not to students who are struggling. We're not telling them you can't be, you can be. What we're saying is, this is what you need to comply with in order for us to identify you as somebody of a different sex from the one that you were born with. And we're also explicitly explaining what the accommodations will be. So I'm open to, we can just do the model policies. We can do the model policies with the amendments that we've been talking about. We can take the resolution and take out anything that is particularly problematic. But like I said, I haven't heard yet specifically what it is that is problematic about the
I have a
resolution.
request that could help us do that.
Yeah.
I tried to crosswalk your version with Youngkin's version. And 95% of what you have is in his policy. But I couldn't find it because you moved it around a little bit.
I did move things a little bit.
If you could make those for,
Future? Or no?
no, for
Okay.
editing purposes,
Okay.
so we could compare them, phrase by phrase.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to reorganize again, because it makes more sense to you, that's fine. But it would really help us to go to 1A and 1A and
Yes.
contrast them. Is that
I
okay?
can absolutely
Thank
do
you.
that. Yes, I have that. I can actually do that. And we had a red line version, but as I was reading it, it doesn't perfectly help because, like I said, I moved some things around just for the purposes of it flowing a little bit better. But I can actually go through what I have and tell you what the differences are.
That would be a magnificent help, and I appreciate that.
Now, do you want that done now or do you want it meeting? Okay,
No.
no problem. We can-
Okay. I am going to call this discussion to a halt unless,
Well, yeah, so what is we have this on the agenda for our next
Well-
meeting to pass or not. So, I guess my question is if we're looking at a majority here that says, okay, we need this or this, we need to come up with something that's going to be workable and present it at our next meeting to where we can do something with it.
that's a great point.
If not, this gets put
And
off.
the assumption here is that we will not probably be able to vote on this at the next meeting because the time it's going to take to look at that, decide what things need to go back into it. And the other aspect we haven't talked about is that something I suggest heavily, is that we have a lawyer that we designate go through this and make sure it's bulletproof. Make sure, not just bulletproof, make sure it's right. Make sure it passes muster. Make sure it's not going to be declared invalid the first shot out. So I think part of the time, and I don't want to stretch it, but I do think we need to have legal eyes on this to make sure that when it's passed, it's not going to run into a legal roadblock immediately.
So, I'm guessing what we're looking at is pulling it for another informational on this next meeting and not action.
That would be my suggestion. We have a policy that's working. We don't have a crisis. I'd rather, spend the extra 3 weeks, get it right, and make sure we feel confident legally going forward. That's
Agreed.
that's
Yeah,
my
I definitely don't think this should be rushed. I think it should be very handled carefully.
okay.
Was this reviewed by any attorneys?
Yes, that was reviewed by Mr. Hessler. The entire draft, resolution, and the exhibit. Do you want somebody in addition to Mr. Hessler?
Yes. No, he has a lot of skin in the game, and Mr. Hess and I work together too in the
Yeah.
stuff that, so we're very well, I think, I feel better if we had somebody, don't want to say mainstream, because I think Mr. Hess is incredibly adept, but I'd rather use a lawyer that probably we will use or have used or have, the school system has some
Now, do we
experience
have
with.
somebody who's, who can talk about the constitutional issues and all that, not just,
That's it. We want to do somebody who is policy-wise, not necessarily school function-wise. Yeah, okay. So I think that's a good way ahead. Dr. Shepherd, you're on. 3.3, policy BDDE, rules of order.
Yes. So, according to policy BDDE, rules of order, the Shenandoah School Board has the authority to establish rules of order as well as to adopt bylaws, policies, and regulations. A member of the school board would like to discuss the rules of order, specifically Robert's Rules of Order. So the recommendation is to discuss the rules of order this evening. I believe we could have a motion at our next meeting that just says something to the effect of that we recommend to use Robert's Rules of Order and go from there. So that's my recommendation.
We have been using Robert's Rules of Order unofficially, and Mr. Rickard pointed out that that is not specifically called for in our policy, but that, I hope I'm not taking words out of your mouth, but that we should. And so I think there's probably a consensus that we do that, but if there is any discussion now about not adopting the Robert's Rules, we probably ought to have that discussion now. Does anybody feel any reason why we can't or shouldn't? I would also suggest that we consider appointing a reputable parliamentarian to attend our meetings and keep us on a straight and narrow. And so I've asked Dr. Shepherd if she'll help us identify some community members. I would like to have the members of the community, so they don't have to travel. We don't have to pay travel costs, et cetera, but somebody who is objective, somebody who will be good at keeping us on target and, yeah. Yes, sir.
My view would be that we add Robert's Rules of Order to the policy in a future meeting.
Yeah.
So the policy that we had discussed,
Absolutely. You mean, yeah.
so we have it more explicitly stating that we're utilizing Robert's Rules of Order.
Indeed. And so, I mean, so we have reached a consensus this evening, but then it would be basically an action item at our next meeting. And there's no reason why we couldn't do that. Is that correct, Dr. Shepherd? Okay. So we can do it.
I've reached out to School Board Member Alliance. They are working on finding us a parliamentarian to sit in on our meetings. I just felt bad because I had gone to School Board Member Alliance Symposium, and at our organizational meeting, we were all looking at Miss Jet for direction, and she's great.
We just think she can do
as a
everything.
Shenandoah County Public School employee, and she does a great job for all of us on board. But to look at her for direction in the middle of a meeting, it kind of, I couldn't imagine being put under that pressure. If we all know Robert's rules and we were supplied the book by Dr. Shepherd, I think if we...
I think one of the, I'm sorry, didn't mean to,
Go ahead.
one of the great things in our county is FFA, and they are so, I was going to use a bad word, they are so strong on Robert's Rules that there are numbers of folks who have very good background in it. So I think we can stay close to home and still assure the kind of professionalism and objectivity that we need. Okay. I said we were going to take time for school board member comments. I'm going to ask politely if you would kind of keep those comments truncated, short, and to the point, and this is the way you can get something on the table for future discussion. So With that in mind, I'm just going to go right around the horn. I started with you first last time, you're going to get it again. Mr. Rickard.
Boy. Man, this is a learning experience. The big thing for me right now, I guess the hot topic, other than this, is the planning time of the teachers. After our last meeting, I had 2 people reach out to me that are way more schooled when it comes to Virginia law. They were like, Mr. Rickard, we want you to know there's 2 laws that back up exactly what you were going after was planning time for the teachers. They've given me the law numbers. If I need to quote them, I can. But one was middle school and high school teachers get 45 minutes a day planning time uninterrupted. Elementary school teachers get a half hour per day uninterrupted. To me, the only time our admin should be interfering with that time is if the teacher elects to give up that planning time to meet with the admin or do things the admin asks, such as call parents or whatever. To me, that's their time to plan for teaching. And then the second thing is, Rhonda, thank you for coming out and speaking this evening. I know what the intent was. We've got a lot of new admin, time to get them together, working together. I would like to see that team building done within the buildings between admin and the teachers, or admin and the staff, so that the staff doesn't feel like they're not necessarily inferior, but it's like an us against them thing. And I think the team building needs to be within the buildings. That way all the staff and admin are working together. I applaud you, Dr. Shepard, for what you were trying to do with all those new admin positions that had just been filled, and getting them all together and learning each other and learning what expectations are. I think we're off to a good start.
Mrs. Rutz.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Gutschall.
I don't have anything either.
Mr. Street.
Yes, anyway, the only thing I had to share is, I had the one day to go visit, the southern end of the campus, and really only visited one, as a school board member, officially visited Honey Run, and, but also have been at North Fork to eat lunch with my, son, and that, I was just there for that, not as a school board member. Anyway, one thing I want to share, but why I have the floor in one of the first time speaking in front of everybody here, I guess. I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but just really briefly, I'm the type person, I want to be a part of something, okay? And it was just like I was telling the principal, Mrs. Bernert at Honey Run, don't take the wrong way if I'm here. I don't believe in micromanaging. It's not, I don't believe in, hey, this is a, new board, we're gonna, keep an eye on things, no. My goal of being here, the reason I'm here is to make Shenandoah County Public Schools the best it can be. And you just said that in your presentation earlier tonight, to be the best we can be. And I'm here to work together. I want to be a part of it. So I don't believe in micromanaging. I don't believe in, that kind of stuff. So I don't want to, it's like I told Honey Run, I don't want to be that school board member that they can say, well, gee, he's been on the school board for a year and a half and we haven't even seen him.